Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. Today's topic is NSAIDs. NSAIDs mean non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. The drugs that comes in NSAIDs, they are analgesics, antipyretics, and anti-inflammatory. Analgesic means they relieve pain, and antipyretic mean that they relieve fever. And you well know what is anti-inflammatory, that decreases inflammation. First comes the classification. Sometimes in examination you may be asked, write down classification of NSAIDs. You can classify them as non-selective COX inhibitors. You can, and under non-selective COX inhibitors there are different chemical groups that I have enumerated here. Similarly, second, preferential COX-2 inhibitors. Third class is selective COX-2 inhibitors, and fourth one are the analgesics and antipyretics with poor anti-inflammatory actions. In this group, the most commonly used drug is paracetamol, as you know, Panadol, that comes with the trade name of Panadol, Calpol, and many other names. So it means that paracetamol, you often take paracetamol for the relief of fever. So remember, it is an analgesic and antipyretic with poor anti-inflammatory action. First of all, we will discuss their general chemistry and pharmacokinetics. Always remember, all NSAIDs are weak organic acids. But there is one exception, and the exception is nabumetone, which is a ketone prodrug. Most of the NSAIDs are well absorbed and the food does not change their bioavailability. They are metabolized by phase 1 followed by phase 2 reactions. Almost all of the NSAIDs undergo enterohepatic circulation. This causes gastric irritation. Most of the NSAIDs are highly protein bound. And the most of the NSAIDs are racemic mixtures. Only naproxen is a single enantiomer. All NSAIDs can be found in synovial fluid after repeated dosing. Now comes the mechanism of action of NSAIDs. So first of all, their anti-inflammatory effect. Basically, their anti-inflammatory effect is produced due to inhibition of the enzyme that is called COX or cyclooxygenase. This cyclooxygenase or COX enzyme usually converts arachidonic acid to prostaglandins and thromboxane A2 and prostacyclin. This diagram is present in your prostaglandins chapter. This is not present in your NSAIDs chapter. It is basically present in your prostaglandins chapter, and I have posted here only you to show, to clear the concept of COX enzyme. You can see here, I will show with your laser pointer. You can show here is the arachidonic acid. On arachidonic acid, COX enzyme acts and prostaglandins are produced. There are different prostaglandins in our body: G2, H2, F, then F2 alpha, D2, I2. That is, from this arachidonic acid, prostaglandins are formed, as well as thromboxane A2 is formed. This is prostacyclin. So basically, your NSAIDs inhibit this step. NSAIDs inhibits these steps. So all of these products will not formed. Second comes the analgesic effect. The analgesic effects of NSAID is thought to be due to peripheral inhibition of prostaglandin production, because your prostaglandins are related with production of pain. Because NSAIDs inhibit the production of these prostaglandins, so pain will minimize or pain will diminish. This analgesic effect may also be due to inhibition of pain stimuli at a subcortical site. Number 2, NSAIDs prevent the potentiating action of prostaglandins on endogenous mediators of peripheral nerve stimulation. For example, bradykinin. Okay, always remember analgesic effect is because of two reasons. Number 1, peripheral inhibition of prostaglandin production, and number 2, they prevent the potentiating action of prostaglandins on bradykinin. And what is this bradykinin? This bradykinin is endogenous mediator of peripheral nerve stimulation. As a result, they act as analgesics. NSAIDs, now you know well that NSAIDs block the prostaglandin generation. How? By blocking the cyclooxygenase enzyme, which are of two types, COX-1, COX-2, and COX-3 has recently been identified. COX-1 is basically constitutive, that is, it is present in normal physiologic conditions, but COX-2 is inducible, that is generated, that is produced whenever in our body there is any inflammation. So these inflammatory cells produce this COX-2. COX-3 is present in brain. Now we will discuss them one by one. So first of all, non-selective COX inhibitors, that is salicylates, and first one is the aspirin. You can see its biochemical structure, and aspirin is basically acetyl salicylic acid that converts the salicylic acid in the body, and it is responsible for its action. Pharmacological actions of aspirin. Aspirin is basically an analgesic, antipyretic as well as anti-inflammatory. However, it is a weaker analgesic than other drugs. Here is a comparison of aspirin 600 mg with codeine and 6 mg of morphine. It effectively relieves inflammation, tissue injury and connective tissue, and integumental pain, but it is relatively ineffective in severe visceral and ischemic pain. Its analgesic effect, we have already discussed how NSAIDs produce analgesic effects. It does not produce any sedation, tolerance, or physical dependence. Anti-inflammatory action is exerted, and this is the important point that you people may be asked. The dose of aspirin at which it produces anti-inflammatory effect. Remember, 3 to 6 gram per day or 100 milligram per kilogram per day is the dose at which aspirin produces anti-inflammatory effect. Aspirin have different effects at different doses. The first effect is anti-inflammatory, that is at about 3 to 6 gram per day. Now is the metabolic effects of aspirin. Metabolic effects are significant only at anti-inflammatory doses, that is at higher doses. Cellular metabolism is increased, especially in the skeletal muscles, due to uncoupling of the oxidative phosphorylation that leads to increased heat production. There is increased utilization of glucose. Blood sugar may decrease, especially in diabetes, and the liver glycogen is depleted. And this is very important in diabetics. Chronic use of large doses causes negative nitrogen balance by increased conversion of proteins to carbohydrates, and plasma-free fatty acid and cholesterol levels are reduced. Now comes the effect on respiration. Again, these effects are dose dependent. At anti-inflammatory doses, respiration is stimulated by peripheral and central actions. In peripheral action, there is increased carbon dioxide production, and central action will be increased sensitivity of respiratory center. Hyperventilation, that is why hyperventilation is prominent in salicylate poisoning. Further rise in salicylate level causes respiratory depression, and death is due to respiratory failure. Now comes the acid base and electrolyte balance. At anti-inflammatory doses, aspirin produces significant changes in the acid base and electrolyte composition of body fluids. Initially, respiratory stimulation predominates and tends to wash out the carbon dioxide. That leads to respiratory alkalosis, which is compensated by increased renal excretion of bicarbonate ions. And this bicarbonate excretion is accompanied by sodium, potassium, and water. Now, still at higher doses, causes respiratory depression with carbon dioxide retention. First, the body is tending to wash out the carbon dioxide, but if dose is increasing, then there will be respiratory depression, and when there is respiratory depression, there will be retention of carbon dioxide. While excess carbon dioxide production continues, that will lead to respiratory acidosis. First, there is respiratory alkalosis because body is compensating increased carbon dioxide, but after this there will be respiratory acidosis because of carbon dioxide retention. On cardiovascular system, aspirin has no direct effect in therapeutic doses. Large doses increases the cardiac output to meet increased peripheral oxygen demand and causes direct vasodilation. Toxic doses depress the vasomotor center and the blood pressure may fall because of increased cardiac work as well as sodium and water retention, as we have discussed in electrolyte balance. And the chronic heart failure may be precipitated in patients with low cardiac reserve. Now is the blood. Aspirin, even in small doses, irreversibly inhibits the thromboxane A2 synthesis by the platelets. Therefore, it interferes with the platelet aggregation and the bleeding time. And this effect is why we use aspirin in patients of ischemic heart disease in low doses. In low doses, we use aspirin as an antiplatelet drug because it inhibits the production of thromboxane A2 in the platelets, and we need this effect in patients of ischemic heart disease. Long-term intake of large doses decreases synthesis of clotting factors in the liver and predisposes to bleeding. It can be prevented by prophylactic vitamin K therapy. Now we will discuss the pharmacokinetics of aspirin. Aspirin, I have told you, it is an acidic drug, and you know acidic drugs are well absorbed in the acidic medium. So it is absorbed in the stomach and small intestine. Its poor water solubility is the limiting factor in absorption. It is rapidly deacetylated in the gut wall, liver, plasma, and other tissue to release salicylic acid, which is the major circulating active form. It slowly enters the brain but rarely crosses the placental barrier. Its metabolites are excreted by glomerular filtration as well as tubular secretion. Now comes the most important topic, that is the uses of aspirin. You will often you will be asked, so please remember all these uses of aspirin, and along with doses as well. We are not going to use the dose of all the drugs that is present in your pharmacology book, but there are certain drugs in about which we will tell them their dose, and one such drug is aspirin. So analgesic dose is 300 to 600 milligram during 6 to 8 hours. Similarly, antipyretic is the same as for analgesic. In case of acute rheumatic fever, if you are going to use aspirin, then anti-rheumatic dose is 75 to 100 milligram per kg per 24 hour or 4 to 6 gram daily. Similarly, there is a syndrome that is called Reye syndrome, a rare form of hepatic encephalopathy usually seen in children that have viral infection. That is, the children that have viral infection and you are going to give them aspirin, they may experience Reye syndrome. And it is usually viral infections of varicella and influenza. Aspirin should not be given to the children under 15 years unless specifically indicated. This is very important post myocardial infarction and post stroke patients for platelet aggregation inhibition. This is given in low doses, I have told you, 100 milligram. In this case, usually patients are taking aspirin 75 milligram. Aspirin is available in market that is given to these patients of ischemic heart disease to prevent platelet aggregation. This is very important use of aspirin, that every patient of ischemic heart disease is using this aspirin in this dose to prevent platelet aggregation. Here are the some certain symptoms of aspirin overdose, that is, you can memorize these symptoms from this picture. Adverse effects, gastrointestinal side effects. These are the most common, and there are usually nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and in overdoses it is epigastric pain and may lead to bleeding and ulceration. And these gastro side effects are thought to be due to direct chemical effect on the gastric cells or decrease in the production and cytoprotective activity of the prostaglandins that leads to gastric tissue susceptibility to damage by the hydrochloric acid. This is very important. Then comes the hypersensitivity. It is relatively uncommon. And if the patient experience hypersensitivity, in these patients aspirin should be avoided. And if a patient is of asthmatic patient after taking aspirin may go to status asthmaticus. There may be cross sensitivities. I have told you the Reye syndrome that occurs in children. For this purpose, we usually use acetaminophen as a substitute for children to prevent this Reye syndrome. Now comes the miscellaneous adverse effects and the contraindications. They decrease the glomerular filtration rate, particularly in patients with renal insufficiency. Occasionally there may be mild hepatitis. There may be prolonged bleeding time. Because aspirin irreversibly inhibits the COX, therefore they suppress the platelet adhesion and aggregation. So it is contraindicated in patients with bleeding disorders. And they are not recommended in patients during pregnancy because they may induce postpartum hemorrhage or premature closure of the fetal ductus arteriosus. So near the end of pregnancy, that after 30 weeks of pregnancy, aspirin is usually stopped because of these two reasons. Similarly, before cardiac surgery or even any other surgery, we have to stop aspirin before surgery so that patient may not bleed from any